Welcome, CEOs. I am Hermione Olivia, and I invite you to cherish every opportunity to connect the dots. CEO Yourself was created as a destination for motivation and to inspire you wherever you are on your journey to become the CEO of your life. Coming up on this week's episode of CEO Yourself.
And if you can learn to slow down and protect your attention and be intentional with the direction you're moving in, you can choose the path that you're going down. The book takes you on this journey of getting quiet enough to listen to that voice, then reflecting on the year that's been through a series of questions that we have spent years cultivating that speak to you as a sort of holistic person, and then opening your mind to what the next year could look like and ultimately arriving on a word that is going to be your anchor and speaks to this next chapter. We can think that the most important things are these big, sparkly things. You know, we make decisions from the outside in, and this journey is about actually reconnecting and making decisions from the inside out.
Exactly.
And realizing that it's not the big things, it's the little things. It's those small moments of meaning at home or with the people you love, and those little things are actually the big things.
I am thrilled to welcome Jessica Yolanda Kaye back to the podcast today to introduce one word so we can intentionally set up 2025 together for success with the practice of choosing one word to root your year. You will notice that, as is always the way with true friends and great conversations, Jess and I couldn't wait and just started chatting away. Join us now.
You know, we live in a world that's all about more, like launching this, doing that, like this constant pressure to be doing more, to be going faster, doing better. And you lose the artist. Like the first thing to go is the writing or the creative freedom, because it can't be contained to 9 to 5. Like it exists in all the moments in between. And I think you have to fight to protect it.
And the sparks of joy for me come at the craziest times.
Yeah.
You know, it's like just as you're falling asleep, you're like, oh, I need to get out of bed and I need to write that. Or, you know, when you're in the middle of something, like last night I just stayed in the car when I got home and got my laptop out and quickly just wrote, because I knew if I'd gone in, that moment would have passed.
Yeah.
But there's also the commercial realities, aside from it being a business, of just the cost of living and, you know, for you, the canvases and the paint and the studio and the costs that you do need to factor in. Okay, well, what am I going to make?
Yeah.
Even for this to break even, you know?
It's so hard. And there are all these incentives, you know, I love to always just paint and never be thinking about, you know, the sale or the likes or the engagement. But unfortunately, you need the sale. You need people to see your work, which means having a presence on social media. And it's really hard you can't ignore those things. But if you think about them too much, it affects the quality of the work. And so it's this constant dance.
And your authenticity.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
I think, for me, I'm striving to have above all else.
Yeah.
And that is a constant pursuit and a constant effort.
Yeah.
To maintain authenticity.
Yeah.
You know, for example, it might be a brand partner comes and that's going to even out what the event costs, and it could be amazing, but it's not authentically aligned and you have to turn it down and then you take the hit.
Yeah.
So to maintain authenticity is really tough.
I completely agree. And I think for me, the thing that's helped me try and protect my authenticity is this idea of integrity. And it's been like, you know, a word that I kind of keep in my back pocket, because when I'm deciding whether or not I'm going to do something, and I'm torn between what sounds like a really sparkly opportunity and then the cost of that, which might be, you know, not being able to create, or my time, my attention, I think integrity is a really nice way of navigating whether or not you do it. You know, is this aligned? To me, integrity is this aligned with my values? So is this opportunity that's really sparkly, that maybe, you know, has, you know, great incentives, is it aligned with creativity? Is it aligned with my desire to connect with people? Is it aligned with impact? And then that's sort of why you do it. And I do think if you follow that, like, good things come and opportunities come, but maybe in the short term it can feel like you're saying no to a lot of things, but in the long term you're kind of paving the way for more meaningful things. But it's hard. It's really hard.
This is so true of us, to just start talking. I don't even know where this episode's going to start to those listening at home. But Jess, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you.
Other than Daisy, you're the second guest we've ever had back.
Oh, nice. It's an honour.
Daisy and I have a new series, but you are back very intentionally because you have spent the last few months traveling and being creative, and you have created this incredible book that I have in my hands today, One Word. And we are launching this episode in the beginning of 2025, the first episode of the year, to celebrate the new year and to bring in this incredible new year. Can you talk to us about One Word and why you're here today?
Very, very happily. I feel like I've been living and breathing the one word for the last couple of months. So I'll sort of introduce what the one word is for those of the listeners who don't know. But Matteo and I, my husband, for the last couple of years, every year we've picked a word. It's a practice that we've grown to absolutely love and rely on, and is probably the most important thing that we do. Unlike New Year's resolutions, it's not about goals or, what I need to achieve. It's a direction, an intention, an anchor for the year that helps guide you in a direction that feels meaningful to you. And on the surface, it's something that seems really simple. And that's the beauty of the one word. It's one word that you put in your back pocket that helps you, navigate your decisions and move in that, grow in a direction that's exciting. But the path to picking a word is actually quite complicated. Like one word that speaks to you as a whole being, not just as, not just to your career, not just as your identity as a mother or a daughter or an artist. It's something to guide you in multiple aspects of your life. And that requires a level of introspection, looking back on the last year and interrogating, what worked and what didn't, and what felt true and what didn't. And then being intentional about the direction you want to move in. And so this book is something that Matteo and I have wanted to work on for a really long time. And we finally had the space because we've spent this year in Italy in our own creative retreat, and we could finally give it the time and love it deserved. Yeah.
This is such an incredible practice. For those listening at home, I have posted about it a few times because I did it last year. And I chose the word from India, where I was on kind of a delayed maternity leave, not feeling good mentally or physically. I did it with a group of friends, but I spent a lot of time thinking about what my word was going to be for 2024. And I chose the word bravery, which truly anchored me throughout the year. And I'm actually covered in goosebumps talking about it because the simple act of considering what I wanted the year to look like and choosing that word allowed me to have one of the most formative and transformational years of my life. We're here today on the eve of my birthday. So it's so fitting that we're going through this process today of what our word will be for 2025. But bravery allowed me just 9 months ago to leave my job, to totally transform my career, to confront my ego. And then throughout the year to take all these leaps of faith and, to step out on stages and to step into this podcast and to take so many risks. And it really helped me. Like even my first big event at the Electric, I honestly didn't feel nerves. And it was because of the word. Like that word really, I felt it come on stage with me.
Yeah.
And this is such an important practice. But what I want to talk about more specifically is, before we deep dive the word and how we're going into 2025, is the level at which you execute everything that you do. We're obviously sitting between your incredible artwork and in what was your studio, and everything you do, you give such incredible love, care, thought, attention to detail. When I think of you doing things so purposefully and so considerately, and I hope to adopt that in 2025 because I tend to fall into that category of wanting to do all the things. And that's definitely what I did in year zero of CEO Yourself was I've got to do everything. I've got to have, a shop and events and clients and, a podcast every week, and I've got to do all the things. And then you are subscribing to a kind of old world burnout mentality. Yeah. What you do so beautifully, Jess, is you go against the grain and you take time to do less in an incredibly beautiful way. Can you talk about how you do that and how we can adopt that in our lives and how we can unsubscribe from this kind of modern way of thinking we need to do and be all things to all people?
Thank you. That's so kind. And it means a lot. And it's funny you should say that, because after I did our first recording, and I picked vulnerability as my CEO superpower, and I had been wrestling between vulnerability and intentionality, and I know that we'd been speaking about it. And a very good friend of mine in Sydney left me a voice note after and said, I love the conversation. I agree, you've shown so much vulnerability, but I do think your superpower is intentionality. And I had this full circle moment of feeling that knowing inside that I completely agree with that. And I think intentionality is something that I have learnt to cultivate through this journey of becoming an artist. The process of being an artist and being creative is this journey of connecting with yourself on a deep level. And it's trying to turn down all the volume outside and connect with that inner artist and come back to, what do I think? What's meaningful to me? And that's how you can make great art. That's how I've learned to get into flow and get out of my head and disconnect from what people think. And I think that journey of learning to create from that free place is how I have learnt to live more intentionally, because it means letting go of what you think you should do and leaning into what feels true to you, which is really, really hard because there are all these messages that are constantly shown to us of what success looks like. It's doing more. It's doing the vent. It's hosting the podcast. It's having the newsletter. It's constant and it is exhausting. And I think culture celebrates it. The person who's doing a million things, it's, how amazing. Look at that output. And I think it's very tempting. It feels really nice when we're getting all that validation, but it leads to burnout. And I think it often leads to going down a path and then one day looking up and thinking, I don't even know how I got here. And if you can learn to slow down and protect your attention and be intentional with the direction you're moving in, you can choose the path that you're going down. And I think that's something I've kind of fallen into through stumbling my way over the years of being an artist and, going down one route and then waking up and feeling really disconnected. And using this practice of picking a word, honestly, I think it is so life-changing. I can look back at every year since we moved to London 6 or 7 years ago. Every year was a different word, and it fundamentally guided the direction I was moving in and had an impact on how I felt at the end of the year and connecting with values. And I think that is the way to live intentionally. And I think, it's amazing hearing how bravery had that impact on you. Like, it makes me feel emotional because it's such a simple tool, but it can really change your life and lead you to such a different place.
The way that you have executed this book is just so beautiful. I lapped it up last night and it is so easily digestible, but it's so considerate and it is just oozing with you and Matteo. Like, it's just so perfectly each of you. Can you talk to the listener about the journey and how they can come up with their word, and then maybe we'll go into what our words are?
Yeah, definitely. Well, firstly, the journey of making that book was really, really interesting. I mean, Matteo and I are very specific with how we do things, as you know. And this was something like a labor of love that we wanted to make incredibly meaningful and special. And we wanted it to feel poetic and inviting, but also, inviting you to go a little bit deeper.
It's very nurturing.
Yeah.
It kind of like holds you in a cocoon as you go on the journey, I felt.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, for some people, they're very comfortable talking about how they feel or, they have a strong self-awareness, and for other people they're disconnected. And so what we wanted from this book is to, whether or not you have a strong practice of reflection or not, for you to be able to reconnect with that voice. I think each of us have, a knowing, whether it's intuition, you call it what you want. I like to think of it as like this inner artist. And it's about reconnecting with that voice and checking in with what you value at this season of your life, and then being intentional about the direction you're moving in. And so the book takes you on this journey of getting quiet enough to listen to that voice, then reflecting on the year that's been through a series of questions that we have spent years cultivating that speak to you as a sort of holistic person, and then opening your mind to what the next year could look like, and ultimately arriving on a word that is going to be your anchor and speaks to this next chapter.
So can you talk to us about what your word is for 2025?
Yeah, definitely. My word for 2025 is mastery.
Oh.
Yeah, which I feel like picking a word is kind of like if you've ever looked for, renting a home, and you've gone to, when we first moved to London, we walked into so many flats, and I was like, you just know immediately when it's not right. But then sometimes you walk in and you're like, oh yeah, this could be good. But then you walk into a place and it feels like home. And I think when I arrived at mastery, I felt that immediate sense of this is exactly what I'm wanting in my life. And for me, mastery speaks to a few things that feel really important to me at the moment. One is patience. I think, we want to have everything all at once, as you said. And we live in a world that is all about rushing. And I think great things take time. I think the best works of art have been, works in progress for years. Even if the painting was done in one day, the process to working towards that artwork is a dedicated practice. And so I love this idea of letting go of this rush and creating enduring things. Mastery to me is also this idea of learning, about going deep into the things that really interest you. And it's also about focus, because I think, when you have your own business, you're doing a million things. And, as we said before, you're the artist, you're the agent, and you're everything in between. And I really want to learn how to focus on the things that I feel like I can bring the most value to and that I enjoy, and then work with other people who are great at what they do, and then let go of the rest, let go of the need to be everything and to do everything well, and just sort of stick to the essence of what I believe in and what I enjoy, which just sort of sounds like you're sort of wanting as well, and of that, trying to narrow down your focus a little bit and not do everything.
Yeah, that's definitely my intention for this year, is to strip things back.
Yeah.
When I went on the journey, which I think I didn't go on the journey in this way when I chose the word last year, so I found this to be even more moving.
Yeah.
Because what you encourage me to think about is where my moments of joy come from. And so I practiced that yesterday. And the happiest moments in my day were with Xanthi and with Ants, and it was at home, and it was those little moments, like, when he walked through the door in the evening, and when she came up into bed in the morning, and that made me realise that these are the joyful moments for me at the moment, and how I need to prioritise them. But also writing just kept coming up for me. Like, I've always wanted to be a writer. It's when I feel truly in flow, but I don't prioritise it.
I love that you arrived at that. Like this, we can think that the most important things are these big, sparkly things. We make decisions from the outside in. And this journey is about actually reconnecting and making decisions from the inside out.
Exactly.
And realizing that it's not the big things. It's the little things. It's those small moments of meaning at home or with the people you love. And those little things are actually the big things. And so it's so nice that you arrived at that. And
I think for me as well, that when I reflected on the CEO Yourself journey, the moments that spark joy in me are the moments of connection. So whether it's this actual moment, having the conversation in the podcast studio, or the actual moment of the event is live and I get to meet the community, or the one-on-one coaching with the client. But what I find difficult is there's so much around that to get to those moments. So in order to have those moments intentionally and more meaningfully, inevitably you have to pull a lot back.
Yeah.
Is that your advice to me or to the listener who is thinking, okay, I do want to live more intentionally and I want to bring greater meaning to fewer moments? How do we practically implement that?
Yeah, I think it's very challenging because of all the things we've said about what's encouraged and what feels like acceptable. I think it really begins with slowing down. And I think slowing down is uncomfortable for a lot of people.
Especially me.
Yeah. And me, believe it or not. And I think when I get to the end of the year, I always burn out. You know, and it's because I burn out that I like kind of, snap out of myself, and I'm like, oh, I'm doing a million things. What's the rush? And I then go into January and I do this thing called No Plans Jan, which is this self, it's this sort of rule to myself to not make plans. And it's to force me to slow down.
So do you just say no to everyone who invites you to something, or?
I say I'm not committing to plans at the moment. I'd love to see you, but I'm not committing to plans at the moment. Like I'm really excited to sort of catch up, but I can't, I'm just not committing. I just want to keep my schedule open. And it doesn't mean I don't see people. I, might just spontaneously call someone up to go for a walk or a coffee, but it's in that space that you can actually connect with what feels most meaningful to you. Whereas we're so used to always be busy, always on the go, always rushing. And I think what I'm realizing is that busyness is an avoidance from sitting with yourself. It is uncomfortable to stop and to sit with yourself. And so most of us would rather just run. Mm-hmm. But it's how we burnt out, and it's how we end up somewhere that we don't want to be. So if you can just slow down, and that means taking time away from your phone and taking time away from doing, and just have some, whether it's journaling or going for a walk or, hanging out with your family, just slow down and strip back and reconnect. I think slowing down is the starting point for sure.
It is very hard though. Like I was so excited for the Christmas break and then January because I didn't have any plans.
Yeah.
And now suddenly here we are in December and everyone's starting to say, let's book in this, let's book in that, da 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 da. And January's starting to become something I'm dreading again.
Yeah. You got to do no plans, Jan.
Well, I'm going to. I'm going to cancel everything that I've scheduled because it is such a precious and beautiful time of the year where you can set up the year for success by using your time intentionally.
Yeah.
You make time every day, and I know we touched on this in your first episode, but you're the person who gets up in the morning and intentionally brews your coffee and goes to Pilates and is fully present at Pilates and maybe speaks to your mum, and I can imagine is like completely present in that conversation. When I think of you, I think of that art of slow movement. It almost feels like you have more hours in the day because I am the opposite. I'm kind of like racing from here to here and, off there and doing a million things. Do you have any other tips about how the listener can kind of set up their days and their weeks? Definitely. Exercise I always come back to. It's like you're always talking about exercise and never doing it. But I think it's such a good example of it's an act of self-love.
Yeah.
And it's an investment in yourself, and we all know we should do it, not from an image or a weight perspective, but because it releases endorphins and makes us feel better. But it seems to be the first thing to go for most people, especially me. How can you encourage us to prioritize what matters? And in the act of finding our word and starting this year considerately, how can we think about the things that matter to us and what we want to achieve in each day and week and month and make them happen?
Yeah. I think January is such a beautiful time to do these things and to really connect with what you value. And I think it's quite liberating and comforting to realize that it's not the big things, it's the small things. So I call them big little things. And so I do these big little things every day that set me up to move through life with ease. Ease was my word for 2024. And above everything, I realized that the things that bring me the most ease, which ease for me is that sense of flow, that sense of peace. It's these little rituals that I hold close every day. And we've moved around so much this last year. We moved from London to Italy, from Milan to the countryside of Umbria to the south of Puglia. I love my routines. I am like such a creature of comfort. You know, my Pilates, my soy cappuccinos from this certain place. Like
your yoga, your hazelnuts.
To a fault. My hazelnuts from a certain place. My yoga from like,
which I've now adopted, by the way. Now that we're back,
it's a good way to live. But it was so destabilizing, and
I have to say, of all of my friends, it was almost like Jess is least likely to have the instability of not having a home. Like, you are such a creature of habit.
Yeah.
I was so inspired and excited by the fact that you kind of, you know, threw caution to the wind and went and just lived.
Yeah.
And I think it's really scary to...
It's so scary.
Confront other people's perceptions of you and to break the rules.
Yeah.
But you did it.
And of myself. I mean, the path of, you know, we were about to sign a lease on a flat in Milan, and Matteo and I looked at each other and we just knew it wasn't right. And I was so desperate for routine and comfort. I wanted my drawers with my things in them. I just wanted to just have a home, and I wanted the safety of a home. And the thought of being nomadic filled me with terror, because I think we are all wired to be in our comfort zone, but I think I'm particularly comfortable in my routine. And I found it really, really challenging. But what it taught me is that it's not, you know, where you get your coffee from or where you do your Pilates. It's starting the day in a way that is centering yourself. And you can do that anywhere. So, you know, in July we were in the forests of Sweden. I don't even know how we got there, but we were literally in the middle of nowhere. And the day would begin with, you know, making like a hot cup of tea or, you know, whatever it was, and sitting on a nook in the couch with a blank notebook and journaling. So for me, above everything else, it's that first half an hour of my day. And I have to sort of caveat that, like, I don't have children. I don't have to rush to the office. I'm incredibly lucky in that I have the luxury of being able to, you know, craft my morning. I'd like to think, and I'd like to hope that I would try and protect that time. And I think it can be 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be half an hour. But I think those first moments of your day, getting quiet, getting out a notebook, and just writing stream of consciousness. So for me, it's 3 pages of just whatever. I don't overthink it. Thoughts in my brain. It's just sort of free flowing writing. And in the beginning, I found that quite uncomfortable, but now it is probably the most important ritual I do. It's like a form of therapeutic writing where I'm just getting these thoughts out of my head onto the page, and I can make sense of my brain more. And it's like doing this mental clearing before the day's begun. So that is really practical, and I think you can do that anywhere. And that's what's so nice about these rituals that I've learned. You don't need to be in the city or near a Pilates place, or, you know, it's journaling. It's not looking at your phone for as long as you can.
It's so hard.
And going for a walk,
Mm-hmm.
Going for a walk in nature. That is, to me, you know, the starting my day that way. That's my big little thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that sets me up to be able to navigate anything. And without that, I feel untethered, and I don't feel well in myself. And so that's all the reason I need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's been a journey of learning how to do that. But I think it's about protecting your mornings. And
I think as well, something to touch on that I've watched you do and I've tried to implement this year is being really boundaried and intentional with who I spend my time with.
Yeah.
Because my 2 best friends are in Australia,
Yeah.
and I don't get to see them all the time. And I use that as a reminder of, you know, my most meaningful friendships are carried out on, you know, FaceTime and WhatsApp. And then when we see each other, it's so incredibly special. I don't want to subscribe anymore to this sense of needing to catch up for the sake of it.
Yeah.
I would prefer to see people and just kind of send people love from afar, you know, like our relationship. I'm kind of like, I love seeing what you're doing, like carry on with it. We don't need to talk all the time or see each other all the time to know that we are there for each other and we love each other.
100%.
But it is incredibly difficult to practice in reality, and I've found it really hard this year, and I have almost felt socially isolated by trying to carve out space to do considerate thinking, or in my case I tried to be a really present mum, and that meant having to let my emails build up and my WhatsApps build up and miss out on trips and dinners and birthdays because that was what I had to do. But I think the truest friends understand and support you in that. Like, I respect you for the fact that when we do catch up, it's so meaningful, and we would never cancel, and we would both show up on time and sit there all evening, and it would be so even more special and meaningful because it is so considerate.
I agree. I think if you really look at things, what would you rather have, a friendship that's this constant touch point that's surface level, or a more meaningful present connection that's deep? Maybe this is unique to you and I, but I definitely connect with the second option. And I think, what are we trying to prove? I think if we're just honest, with ourselves and with each other, I think the people who really care for you will support you. I do think it's really interesting how when you act with integrity, which I think is just being true to yourself, it can make other people uncomfortable. And I think we like to fit in. We almost hold up a mirror to other people, and we want to see our own reflection in them. And if they're doing something different, it's like it brings up something, it's triggering, it somehow becomes this reflection on us when it's got nothing to do with us. I think, we should all just be allowed to move through life in a way that feels true to us. And it's one of the hardest things in the world. But if we can come back to that, I do think the right people, your people, will accept that and, will encourage it.
So let's go on the journey of my word so that it helps the listener go on the journey of theirs.
Yes.
So do you want to talk us through the steps for those that don't have the joy of being one of the lucky few to have the book? We'll talk about where to get the book shortly, but can you talk us through the practical steps?
Yeah, I think a starting point is, getting quiet, carving out a bit of time to sit with a journal, whether it's a blank journal, whether it's the book, and just reflecting on the year that's been, and looking back. And, the book takes you through specific questions, but it's essentially connecting with, the moments you felt most at peace, the moments you felt most alive. When did you feel, I'd love to know, was there a time in the year where you felt most you, the part of you that doesn't need to be performing, the part of you that just can be free? Was there a time that came to mind when you...
It's just always just comes back to Xanthi.
Yeah.
Like the more time I spend with her, the deeper the connection, the more meaningful the relationship, the more kind of in jokes we have. And I don't know, the way, now she comes up and says cuddles, and like she's very selective with the way that she kisses people and like who she kisses. But when she gives me that like one kiss each day on the lips, it's, the greatest joy I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
But also being really vulnerable and honest about the practical realities of life as a working mum through my writing and conversations. We hosted our Women in Business Summit on the weekend, and just being really honest to a room of 50 women with entrepreneurial startups and telling them what really goes on behind the scenes and how hard it is, and having that honest connection and being vulnerable. Those were the moments of joy for me this year.
That's beautiful. And I think it's so nice to strip back and be honest with yourself about when you feel most, at ease and most yourself. And I think, that's the beauty of reflection. If you don't take the time to sit down and really be intentional and honest about what you value, then how do you know what to be prioritizing in your life? if you're realizing that your relationship with Xanthi is so special and so meaningful to you, then when you're thinking about the year ahead, how are you making space for that? How are you honoring that? And I think that's what this book takes you on the journey of: reflecting, reconnecting with what you value, setting a direction through a word of that guides you, but also helps empower the decisions you make. Because, my word this last year was ease. And when I would be deciding about, leaving London or not, or staying in Milan or not, or even just small decisions about whether I want to send out a specific newsletter or not, ease was the guide. Does this feel like me? Does this create a sense of ease, a sense of peace within me? And, our life is made up of those decisions. So if we can have this one intention to guide it, then I think we can, move in a direction that's meaningful. But I'd love to know what word you landed on.
Where I came to was I wanted to live in a more conscious way, and I wanted to create space. I wanted to be even more present, and probably to give myself a bit of a break.
Yeah.
Like alleviate some of the pressure I put on myself in subscribing to that lifestyle of I need to do and be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
And surrender just naturally came up for me. And it just, like you said, it just felt like home, which is what happened with bravery. I didn't even need to give it much thought. It just arrived.
Yeah.
I feel as if surrendering to the year and allowing space for each moment and surrendering to what arises.
Yeah.
And in that comes up a lot of the things you've spoken about. So being intentional and being patient, surrendering to the fact that things take time, which is why for anyone with a new business, I encourage year one being year zero because that alleviates a lot of pressure. No one is, raking in the profit in year one or year zero. So for me, this was the year.
The stakes.
Yeah. This was the year of trial and error and of testing it all. And then 2025 will be the year of surrendering because I can't be all things to all people. And probably it means a lot of saying no again.
Yeah.
Having more intentional and meaningful connection with friends and family and saying no to opportunities and stripping back what this business looks like, because before I know it, Xanthi will be going off to nursery this year.
Yeah.
And that is such a big step change because she's not just at home whenever I'm there.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, so, really making the most of these sacred moments with her. Yeah.
I love that. I love surrender. It feels like such a, I don't know, you kind of feel the energy of that word as you say it. There's this sort of letting go and, it's a letting go of control. It's also kind of leaning into flow because you can have this idea of what you want to do and what you want to achieve and have a plan. And then things change. Life has its way of kind of changing things and just being able to let go and enjoy the ride and not try and do everything. And I agree with you, saying no is really important. And sometimes you have to say no to the things that you do want to do so that you can say yes to the things that you really want to do. And it's nice viewing a no as like the opportunity to be saying yes to something that you value at this stage of your life.
So this book is in a limited run.
Yeah.
Where can the listener get their hands on it? This is the most beautiful gift you could give someone or yourself. Where can they buy the book?
So you can get the book on the website www.myword.is.
Amazing.
And then we have an Instagram, What's Your One Word? So yeah, we're doing a limited run. Every single detail of this book has been considered. Classic.
It is just, I cannot explain to you how beautiful it is to hold this.
The naked spine, the stitching, the colour of the paper. I mean, it was just hilarious. The two of us in Italy obsessing about paper, obsessing about every single letter, every word. We just wanted someone to feel like it was a treat to go through, and then also make their own. You know, we're going to spend this time in January like going through it again, scribbling in it, writing notes. Like I want people to feel like it's their own canvas, and it's something to be completely yourself, and it's yours to kind of hold close and to guide you in a direction that feels true to you.
You also have an incredible Substack.
Thanks.
Where can the listener find the Substack? And I believe some of these artworks are still available.
Yes.
Only a handful.
So I think the best is probably my Instagram, Jessica Yolanda Kaye. And then, on that, there's links to my website and my Substack, which is Between the Lines.
Perfect. We'll put everything in the show notes.
Perfect.
Thank you for being here and for being so intentional and inspiring in the way you live. I can't wait for you, the listener, to go on this journey of one word.
And no plans, Jan, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's start a movement.
And Happy New Year to everyone. I'm so excited for what 2025 has in store for all of us.
I know, me too. I think it's going to be a good one.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. Giving us a moment of your time to like, rate, or follow CEO Yourself will make a huge difference to our future.